In the COP, our main focus is, of course, in contributing to the events in the African Pavilion. The African Pavilion is a joint initiative of the United Nations Economic Commission and the African Development Bank, the United Nations African Economic Commission, and NEPAD, as well as the Africa Union Commission. And what we are doing is we are putting together events that are designed to discuss, debate, contribute to thinking about a whole range of issues that concern the implementation of the Paris Agreement in Africa, as well as the contribution that Africa can make to the further development of the implementation of that agreement. Well, there are several challenges that we are facing. The first is that the Paris Agreement is coming into force very quickly. In a way, there have been all these discussions about the need to have a quick resolution of the climate challenge. But the rate at which the Paris Agreement is coming into effect is probably faster than many people had anticipated. And so it is really necessary that this COP spends time thinking about how to develop the appropriate rules and regulations regarding the implementation of the agreement. So that is going to require a lot of discussion between the different committees, between the different parties, as well as between the different interested stakeholders. Beyond that discussion, there is also a need to review what has happened in the previous years regarding the whole progression of the response to climate change, the global response. Yes, I think a lot of progress has been made between the Kyoto Protocol and in the lead up to the Paris Agreement. There are also a lot of challenges that remain which need to be resolved. For us, from an African perspective, the challenges are around the financing for the agreement, the provision of adequate means of implementation, the development of a transparent global stock-taking process to ensure that the NDCs are going to contribute to what we think is desirable for Africa. And of course, the clarification of the implications of the 1.5 degrees for Africa. This is a big issue that has to be debated here.
What about progress that has been made in Africa related to climate change? Do you think that it is a real technological transmission that has been made in this?
I think that Africa has made significant progress towards ensuring that it contributes to the achievement of its climate goals. As you know, Africa contributes very little to global emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. But the continent is making real efforts to ensure that it regulates its own emissions, that it contributes to designing appropriate adaptation initiatives, that it channels investments towards cleaner technologies, cleaner energy, and so on. I think, in my view, Africa could have an option to say that we have not contributed to climate change and that therefore we can continue on a development path that does not necessarily take account of climate impacts. But the continent has chosen not to take that path. Instead, the continent has chosen to take a leadership role in ensuring that the world responds to climate change. That in itself is significant progress. But also the fact that there are all these investments by Africa in climate-sensitive development trajectories is also something that we should applaud as a continent. And certainly also Africa is contributing to the global climate governance framework. So yes, there has been progress in Africa towards achieving the climate goals.
Like beyond the government debates with populations, do you think that populations today are more able to accept and adapt themselves to the climate change?
The impacts of climate change in Africa are felt mostly in the context of precipitation and temperature. So this is the continent which is actually affected, perhaps more than other continents, by changes in precipitation. We have an increase in flooding, an increase in drought, an increase in temperatures and so on. And African populations feel this perhaps more than other populations because of the limited capacity of this continent to respond. Well, think about it. I mean, if you have a drought, this continent has got the least capacity to be able to very quickly, rapidly develop responses such as ensuring access to food, ensuring food security, or in the following season, ensuring that agricultural systems are facilitated in their response to the challenges. We have very limited capacity to realign our irrigation systems to changing availability of water, limited capacity to change, to respond, to increasing temperatures and so on. So limited capacities both in terms of the financial capacities, the planning capacities, the human resources that are available to the continent, the infrastructure that is available, a whole range of issues that have to be resolved to ensure that we respond appropriately to already occurring climate change.
Do you all participate in Africa as a continent? Do you think that it is like an international movement that to respond to?
International in Africa, yes. We participate in the negotiations as a continent. We have an Africa group of negotiators that has been participating for several years now as a grouping of African government representatives. But Africa is also developing continent-wide initiatives. The two most significant ones are the Africa Renewable Energy Initiative, which was launched in Paris, as well as the Adaptation Initiative, which seek to support adaptations in various sectors of African economies. Both of those are African initiatives. But Africa as a continent has also come together and created the Committee of African Heads of State on Climate Change. I think it's the only continent which has actually been able to convene at the level of the heads of state a committee that is focusing particularly and specifically on climate change issues. So yes, there are international initiatives across the African continent. Yeah.